Dr. Kim Hana stood in the control room deep beneath the desert sands. Her hands shook as she looked at the giant machine they had built over 30 years. This was the day Earth would finally talk to the stars. "Everything ready?" she asked Lee, Minho, who sat at the main computer. "Yes, Doctor. The message is loaded and waiting," Minho replied, his voice quiet in the underground chamber. The message was special. Scientists and writers from every country on Earth had worked together to create it. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans were smart, peaceful, and ready to be friends. The message had math problems to prove humans could think, pictures of Earth's art and music, and most importantly, promises that Earth wanted peace with everyone. Park So-man, who helped write the peaceful parts of the message, walked over to Dr. Kim. "Are you sure about this? Once we send it, there's no going back." Dr. Kim nodded. "Humanity deserves to know if we're alone or not. Send it." The machine hummed loudly as it came to life. Energy flowed through cables thick as tree trunks. The message shot out into space faster than light itself, carrying Earth's first hello to alien worlds they hoped were listening. Then came the waiting. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. The scientists took turns watching the screens, hoping for any sign that someone out there had heard them. Earth's governments asked for daily reports. News channels showed the same empty screens every night. Children around. The world went to sleep wondering if aliens would answer tomorrow. After 6 long months of silence, everything changed in one day. The first message arrived while Dr. Kim was eating lunch. Alarms rang through the facility as computers detected the signal. She ran to the control room where Minho was already working to translate the incoming data. "It's from something called the Valorans," he said, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "The translation is coming through now." The message appeared on the big screen in simple words that made Dr. Kim's heart sink. "We have looked at your species called human. You cannot join us. You are too violent. Stay on your planet." "That's it?" Park So-man asked, staring at the short, cold message. 30 years of work for 12 words? But the Valorans were just the beginning. Over the next week, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Each one was a rejection, but they all said different things about why humans weren't wanted. The Nethek, who seemed to be made of living crystal, said humans were too primitive and aggressive. The Whispers, strange beings who lived in the clouds of gas giant planets, called human behavior unstable and territorial. A race of machine-like beings, said humans, showed patterns of destructive expansion. Each rejection hit harder than the last. Dr. Kim watched her team's excitement turn to confusion, then to sadness, and finally to anger. "They don't even know us," Minho said one evening as another rejection arrived. "How can they judge an entire species based on old radio signals and TV shows?" The worst message came on the 7th day. It carried official seals and symbols that the computer said meant it came from something called the Galactic Confederation. This was apparently the government that ruled most of the galaxy. Park So-man read the translation out loud, her voice getting quieter with each word. "The species known as humans are officially designated as a quarantine world. No human may leave their star system. This decision is final and will not be changed." The room fell completely silent. 30 years of hoping, dreaming, and building had led to this moment. Earth had reached out with open hands and been told to stay away forever. Dr. Kim looked around at her team. These people had given their lives to this project. Some had never married because they were too busy working. Others had missed watching their children grow up. All of them had believed that this day would be the beginning of a bright future for humanity. "What do we tell Earth?" asked a young technician named Kang Junho. "What do we tell the children who asked if we'd found aliens yet?" Dr. Kim walked to the window that looked out at the desert above. Somewhere up there, past the blue sky and the stars, was a galaxy full of life that wanted nothing to do with humanity. Earth had spent centuries wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't alone, but they might as well be. "We tell them the truth," she said finally. "The galaxy doesn't want us. But that doesn't mean we stop being human. Maybe they're right about us being violent, maybe we do have problems. But we also have something they might not understand. What's that? Minho asked. Dr. Kim turned back to her team with a small, sad smile. We don't give up. And when someone needs help, we help them, even if they don't like us. She didn't know it then, but those words would become more important than any message they had sent to the stars. 3 years had passed since the galaxy told Earth to stay away. Captain Cho Ji-han floated in his small spaceship at the edge of the solar system, watching the stars and feeling trapped. His ship, the Taeguk, was one of only 12 vessels Earth had that could travel faster than light. But there was nowhere to go with them. "Captain," called Navigator Yang Minji from her seat, "I'm getting a strange signal. It's not coming from the Confederation." Ji-han pushed himself over to look at her screen. The signal was weak and broken, like someone calling for help from very far away. "Can you clean it up?" Minji worked for several minutes adjusting dials and pressing buttons. Slowly, the signal became clearer. It was definitely a distress call, but the language was nothing Earth had heard before. "Let me try to translate it," said Communications Officer Kang Junho. He had studied every alien language they knew about. After 20 minutes of work, his face went pale. "Captain, these people are in serious trouble." The message told a sad story. A small ship was dying in space, carrying families who had been kicked out of their home planet. The reason they were kicked out made Ji-han angry. Their children had been born different from normal members of their species. Instead of helping these families, their government had forced them to leave and never come back. "How many people are on that ship?" Ji-han asked. 23 adults and 16 children, Junho replied. "Their life support systems are failing. They have maybe 2 days left." Dr. Shin Yuna, the ship's doctor, looked up from her medical readings. "Ji-han, if we don't help them, those children will die." Ji-han stared out at the stars. Earth had been told to stay in their solar system. If they rescued these aliens, the Confederation might get angry. But somewhere out there, children were dying because nobody wanted them. "Set course for their location," he ordered. "Maximum speed." "But Captain," Minji said nervously, "what if the Confederation finds out?" Ji-han thought about the rejections Earth had received 3 years ago. Every alien species had called humans too violent, too dangerous. Maybe they were right about humans being different, but maybe being different wasn't always bad. "If helping people in trouble makes us dangerous, then I guess we're dangerous," he said. The rescue took 6 hours. When they found the alien ship, it was barely holding together. Pieces of metal floated around it like a broken puzzle. The Taeguk carefully pulled the dying vessel into its cargo bay. The aliens inside were unlike anything Ji-han had ever imagined. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to be made of glass. Their skin changed colors based on how they felt: blue when sad, red when scared, yellow when happy. The adults all looked exhausted and worried. The children looked sick and afraid. Dr. Yuna worked for hours to save the sickest ones. These aliens breathed different air than humans, so she had to quickly learn how their bodies worked. The alien parents watched her with amazement as she refused to give up on their dying children. The aliens called themselves the Lost Singers. Their leader was an old alien named Kelsar, whose skin stayed a sad purple color most of the time. Through slow translation work, he told Ji-han their story. "Our people have special mind powers," Kelsar explained in broken words. "We can talk to each other without speaking. But our children were born without this power. The council said they were broken. They said we had to leave or they would take our children away from us." Ji-han felt sick to his stomach. These people had been thrown away because their children were different. It reminded him too much of Earth's situation. "Where were you going?" he asked. Kelsar's skin turned darker purple. "Nowhere. We just flew into space hoping to find somewhere that would take us, but nobody wants broken people." Dr. Yuna came over with good news. "I've managed to stabilize all the children. They're going to be okay." She looked at Ji-han with determination. "But they need a safe place to live and grow." Ji-han made a decision that would change everything. "What if I told you there was a place full of people who were also considered too dangerous and different?" A place where being different isn't seen as broken? Kelsar's skin flickered with the faintest yellow hope. Such a place exists? It's called Earth, Jihan said, and I think you'd like it there. As the Teguk turned toward home, Jihan realized something important had just happened. Earth wasn't alone after all. Somewhere in the galaxy were others who had been rejected, thrown away, and told they didn't belong. Maybe the Confederation was wrong about a lot of things. 3 weeks later, the Lost Singers settled in a small town in South Korea. The children learned to play human games. The adults learned to grow Earth food. For the first time in years, Kelsar's skin stayed a warm, happy yellow. Word of this rescue spread quietly through space, carried by traders and travelers who worked outside Confederation law. Other outcasts heard about it and began to wonder, maybe there was hope after all. 3 years had passed since the galaxy rejected Earth. Captain Cho Jihan sat in his spaceship at the very edge of the solar system, staring at the stars that felt like prison bars. His ship, the Teguk, was one of Earth's few vessels that could travel faster than light. But the Confederation had made it clear, humans must stay home. "Captain, I'm picking up something weird," said navigator Yang Minji, frowning at her screen. "It's a distress signal, but it's not using any Confederation frequencies." Jihan floated over to look. The signal was weak and crackling like a radio in a thunderstorm. "Can you make it clearer?" Minji worked her controls for several minutes. Slowly, the broken signal became a desperate voice speaking in an unknown language. Communications officer Kang Junho listened carefully, his face growing more worried with each word he translated. "Captain," Junho said quietly, "these people are dying out there. They're refugees. Their own government threw them out because their children were born different." Dr. Shin Yuna, the ship's medical officer, looked up from her readings. 23. Adults, 16 children. Their life support is failing, maybe 2 days left. Jihan closed his eyes. Earth had been called too dangerous to join galactic civilization, but here were people the galaxy had abandoned completely, floating in space with nowhere to go. Children were dying while their parents watched helplessly. "Plot a course to their location," he ordered. "But sir," Minji whispered, "the quarantine. If the Confederation finds out we left the solar system..." Jihan thought about the cold rejection messages Earth had received. Every alien species had called humans violent and unpredictable. Maybe they were right about humans being different from the rest of the galaxy. "Set course," he repeated. "Maximum speed." The rescue took 8 hours. When they found the alien ship, it was barely holding together. Metal plates hung loose like broken wings. Through the viewports, they could see scared faces looking back at them. The aliens were beautiful and strange. They looked almost like humans made of living glass, their transparent skin shifting colors with their emotions. Right now, all of them glowed dark blue, the color of fear and sadness. Dr. Yuna worked frantically to save the sickest children while the alien parents watched in amazement. She had never treated this species before, but she refused to give up. Slowly, the children's breathing became easier. Their parents' skin began to flicker with tiny sparks of yellow hope. The refugees called themselves the Lost Singers. Through careful translation, their leader Kelsar told their story. His skin stayed a deep purple as he spoke about the shame his people felt. "Our species talks with minds, not voices," he explained in broken standard. "But our children were born without this gift. The High Council said they were broken, useless. We had to choose. Abandon our children, or leave forever." Jihan felt anger burning in his chest. These people had been thrown away because their children were different. Just like Earth had been rejected for being too human. "Where were you trying to go?" he asked. Kelsar's purple deepened. "Nowhere. Everywhere. We hoped someone, somewhere might want broken people." A small lost singer child, maybe 6 years old, tugged on Dr. Yuna's coat. The child couldn't speak with her mind like normal members of her species, but she had learned to use her voice. In tiny, careful words, she asked, "Are you going to send us away too?" Dr. Yuna knelt down and smiled. No, little one. We're going to take you somewhere safe. Where? The child asked, her skin flickering between blue fear and yellow hope. Earth, Jihan said, making a decision that would change everything. You're coming home with us. The lost singers had never heard of Earth. When Jihan explained about the quarantine, about how humans had also been rejected by the galaxy, Kelsar's skin began to glow with the faintest green curiosity. Your people help outcasts like us? He asked. We are outcasts like you, Jihan replied. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, something beautiful happened. The lost singer children, who had been told they were broken because they couldn't speak with their minds, discovered they could sing with their voices. Their songs were so beautiful that even the human crew members cried when they heard them. When they arrived at Earth, the lost singers were amazed. Here was a whole planet full of people who had been rejected by the galaxy, but instead of giving up, they had kept building, kept hoping, kept helping each other. The refugees settled in a small mountain village in Korea. The children learned to play Earth games and eat Earth food. The adults shared their knowledge of crystal growing and energy weaving. For the first time in years, their skin stayed warm yellow and orange, colors of happiness and belonging. But the most important thing happened 3 months later. A message arrived on an old trading frequency, sent by someone calling themselves the Wanderer. It was simple. We heard humans help the unwanted. Is this true? Jihan smiled as he recorded his reply. Yes. Earth's door is always open for those who have nowhere else to go. Word was spreading through the dark corners of the galaxy. Earth, the quarantined world that everyone had rejected, was becoming a beacon of hope for the lost and forgotten. 2 years after the lost singers arrived on Earth, stories began spreading through the dark corners of space. Smugglers whispered about it in hidden trading posts. Pirates shared the tale around stolen fires. The story was always the same. There was a planet called Earth where the rejected could find help. Engineer Park Ji-ho floated outside Kepler Station, welding new sections onto what had once been a pile of space junk. The station grew larger every month as more outcasts arrived. What started as a small trading post had become a city in space, built from the wreckage of ships that nobody else wanted. Ji-ho, we need you inside, called Station Commander Oh Sung-yi through his radio. Another refugee ship just arrived. Ji-ho pushed himself through the airlock and into the station's main hub. Through the large windows, he could see a ship that looked ready to fall apart. Smoke leaked from its engines and one wing hung at a wrong angle. Who are they? He asked. Grakari survivors, Sung-ye replied, her face sad. The last of their kind. Ji-ho knew the story. The Grakari had lived on a beautiful ocean world for thousands of years. But when the Confederation needed more space, for a mining operation, they decided the Grakari homeworld was strategically unnecessary. The entire species was moved to a small, dying moon. Most had died from the poisoned air. These were the few who had escaped. Dr. Ryu Sunwoo was already in the medical bay when the Grakari came aboard. They were small, furry creatures with big eyes that showed too much sadness for their size. Many were sick from breathing bad air for years. Can you help them? Asked their leader, an old Grakari named Tiki whose fur had turned white from stress. We'll do everything we can, Sunwoo promised, already preparing his medical equipment. What happened next amazed Tiki. Dr. Sunwoo worked for 3 days straight, refusing to sleep until every sick Grakari was stable. He used expensive medicines, without asking for payment. He gave the children toys to play with while they recovered. He even learned a few words in their language to make them feel less scared. Why? Tiki asked on the 3rd day. Why help strangers who can give you nothing? In return? Sunwoo looked tired but smiled. Because help shouldn't have a price. This idea, help without payment, was completely new to most aliens. The Confederation worked on strict rules. You could only receive help if you could pay for it, or if you were useful to someone important. But humans seemed to help just because helping was the right thing to do. Word spread faster after that. A group of crystal beings arrived after their sun began dying, making their homeworld too cold to survive. The humans built them special heated shelters, and worked to find them a new planet to live on. A ship full of young aliens arrived next. All of them had been kicked out of their families for falling in love with the wrong species. On their homeworlds, this was considered shameful. But the humans just shrugged and helped them find jobs and places to live together. Back on Earth, Dr. Kim Hana had been promoted to director of a department that officially didn't exist. Her job was to coordinate all the secret help Earth was giving to aliens across the galaxy. Her office walls were covered with star charts showing refugee camps, medical stations, and schools that humans had built in forgotten corners of space. "The network is getting big," reported intelligence analyst Nam Taeyang during their weekly meeting. "We're now helping 47 different species." "Any problems with the Confederation?" Hana asked. "They're starting to notice. Scout ships have been spotted near some of our operations." Taeyang looked worried. "What if they try to stop us?" Hana studied the charts. Each dot represented lives saved, children fed, families reunited. The humans weren't trying to build an empire or make themselves rich. They were just doing what felt right. "Let them notice," she said quietly. "We're not ashamed of helping people." The most amazing change happened on Kepler Station itself. What had started as a desperate hiding place for refugees became something like a small city. The Grakari used their knowledge of ocean farming to grow food in water tanks. The lost singers taught music classes to children from a dozen different species. The crystal beings shared their ability to grow beautiful formations that provided light and warmth. Engineer Jiho watched it all happen with wonder. Species that had never met before worked together like old friends. Children played games that mixed rules from different worlds. Adults shared knowledge that had been lost when their homeworlds were destroyed. "Look at this," Commander Sunghye said one evening, pointing out the main window. A Grakari child was teaching a lost singer child how to swim in the station's water gardens, while a young crystal being created colored light patterns for them to swim through. "The Confederation said these species were useless," Jiho said. "But look what they can do when someone gives them a chance." 3 months later, the first official request arrived. It came from a group of Confederation member species who had been secretly watching the human operations. Their message was simple but revolutionary. "We want to learn how you do this. Can you teach us to help instead of just rule?" The galaxy was starting to realize that maybe the humans knew something important about what civilization could really mean. The Confederation fleet arrived like a storm of metal and fire. 600 warships surrounded the Helix Nebula, where humans had built their largest refugee settlement. The massive ship Galactic Harmony led the attack. Its weapons pointed at the small human stations below. Admiral Song Hyojin stood on the bridge of his ship Soul's Pride, looking at the enemy fleet through his view screen. His 37 ships looked tiny compared to the Confederation armada, but he wasn't afraid. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Im Da-yoon, "they're demanding we surrender immediately or they'll destroy everything." Hyojin smiled calmly. "Send a message to all human stations. Tell them to execute Protocol Harmony." Da-yoon looked confused. "What's Protocol Harmony, sir?" "You'll see," Hyojin said. On the planet below, something unexpected began to happen. As Confederation ships moved to destroy the human-built hospitals and schools, they found their targets surrounded by thousands of aliens. But these weren't human allies. They were the very beings the Confederation claimed to be protecting. The lost singers formed a living wall around the medical center, where Dr. Ryu Sunwoo had saved their children. Their translucent skin glowed bright yellow with determination. "You want to destroy this place?" their leader called out. "You'll have to go through us first." At the refugee school, Grakari families linked arms around the building where human teachers had been showing their children subjects the Confederation said were unnecessary for worker species. The small, furry beings looked tiny but fierce as they faced the giant warships above. Admiral Thiska of the Confederation stared at his screens in disbelief. These were species his government had written off as worthless: genetic failures, economic burdens, social problems. Yet here they were, protecting the humans his fleet had come to arrest. "Sir?" his weapons officer reported nervously. We cannot fire without hitting the native populations. Move them out of the way, Thaiska ordered. They refuse to move, sir. And sir, there's more. New ships were arriving, but not human vessels. These belong to 3 major Confederation member species, the Keltharians, the Mordai, and the Centauri Commonwealth. Their message to Admiral Thiska was shocking. These humans have shown us what the Confederation should have been. We will protect them. The Keltharian fleet commander, Admiral Vex Ra, broadcast a message that every ship in the system could hear. For 300 years we followed Confederation law. We abandoned the weak and ignored the suffering because we were told it was necessary for order. But humans showed us a different way. They helped those we threw away, and those people became strong and valuable. The Confederation calls this illegal. We call it right. What had started as a simple arrest mission was becoming the largest military crisis in galactic history. The Confederation found itself facing not just humans, but a growing coalition of its own former members. Captain Cho Ji-han, now commanding a small fleet of mixed human and alien ships, received an emergency communication from Earth. Ji-han, the Confederation is mobilizing more fleets. This could become a full war. Ji-han looked around his bridge. His crew included beings from 15 different species, all working together. A Grakari navigator, a lost singer communications officer, a crystal being at the weapons station. These people had found homes and purposes because humans had given them a chance. Then we fight, he said simply. But the war everyone expected never really happened. Instead, something more powerful occurred. The truth spread. As news of the standoff reached Confederation worlds, ordinary citizens began asking questions. Why were their fleets trying to destroy hospitals and schools? Why were species they'd been told were worthless fighting so hard to protect human helpers? What were humans really doing that was so dangerous? The answers came from refugees who had been helped by humans. Their stories spread through underground networks, social media, and whispered conversations. Tales of humans who gave medicine without asking for payment, who taught children whose own governments had given up on them, who built homes for species that had been declared extinct. On the Confederation capital world, protests began. Citizens demanded to know why their government was fighting people who helped refugees. Some Confederation leaders tried to explain that humans were disrupting galactic order, but the protesters had a simple question. What's wrong with helping people? The crisis reached its peak when Admiral Thiska received new orders from the Confederation Council. Withdraw immediately. Do not engage human forces. The order came too late to save the Confederation's reputation. Too many species had seen the truth. The government that claimed to bring order and prosperity to the galaxy was actually built on abandoning anyone who couldn't contribute to their system. 3 months later, the Galactic Confederation officially collapsed, not because of military defeat, but because its own citizens realized there was a better way to live. Admiral Song Hyojin received the surrender of the Confederation fleet in a ceremony aboard Kepler Station. But instead of celebrating victory, he offered something different. Join us. Help us build something better. Many former Confederation officers accepted. They had spent years following orders to ignore suffering and abandon the weak. Now they wanted to learn how to help instead of harm. As the last Confederation ships powered down their weapons, Captain Jihan broadcast a message that would be remembered for generations. The war is over. The real work begins now. 1 year after the Confederation fell apart, President Lee Byung-ho walked into a building that looked nothing like the old government centers. Instead of tall chairs for important species and small seats for weak ones, every alien sat in a perfect circle. No one was higher or lower than anyone else. We meet today not as rulers and servants, Byung-ho said to the hundreds of different aliens gathered around him, but as neighbors who help neighbors. The new government was called the Alliance of Free Worlds. It worked very differently from the old Confederation. Instead of making species pay for help, the Alliance gave help freely. Instead of abandoning weak planets, they made them strong. Instead of deciding who was valuable and who wasn't, they treated everyone as equals. Dr. Kim Hana, now old but still sharp, served as the Alliance's first Secretary of Mutual Aid. Her job was to coordinate help between different worlds. Every day requests came in. Some planet needed medical supplies, another needed teachers, a third needed help with their failing farms. Every request was answered. "The Zephyrians are asking for help again," reported her assistant, showing Hana a message on his tablet. "Their children are getting sick from something in their water." "Send a medical team immediately," Hana replied, "and ask the crystal beings if they can purify water systems. They're good at that." This was how the new galaxy worked. When someone had a problem, others shared their solutions. The crystal beings had learned water purification from humans. The Grakari had taught everyone about ocean farming. The lost singers shared their beautiful music, which somehow helped sick people heal faster. Engineer Park Jiho, now director of Galactic Infrastructure, worked on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. The Grakari, who the Confederation had declared extinct, now thrived on 23 different worlds. Their ocean farming techniques were feeding millions of people across the galaxy. "The new Grakari colony ships are ready," Jiho reported during the weekly planning meeting. "They want to establish farms on the desert world of Karath 9. The desert people there have been struggling to grow food for decades," said Commander Oh Sunghye, who now coordinated refugee settlements. "This partnership will save both species." The most amazing changes happened when different species worked together. The lost singer's mind music helped the crystal beings grow formations faster and stronger. The Grakari's water knowledge, combined with human engineering, created farms that could grow food anywhere. Alien mathematics helped humans build better spaceships. Captain Cho Jihan, now an elderly admiral, commanded the New Harmony, a ship gifted to the Alliance patrol fleet by Earth. His crew included beings from 40 different species, all working as equals. They spent their days answering distress calls and helping lost travelers. "Admiral," reported his Keltharian communications officer, "we're receiving today's assistance requests." Jihan smiled as he read through the list. A colony ship needed navigation help after their computers failed. A research station was asking for medical supplies for their mixed-species crew. A newly discovered planet wanted to learn how to join the Alliance peacefully. "Set course for the colony ship first," he ordered. "They have children aboard." This was the new way of thinking that humans had brought to the galaxy. Children came first. The weak were protected. No one was abandoned just because they couldn't pay for help. The changes weren't always easy. Some former Confederation species struggled to understand why they should help others for free. They had spent centuries thinking that strength meant taking what you wanted and ignoring everyone else's problems. But slowly, they learned. When the proud Valorans, the first species to reject Earth, faced a plague that their advanced medicine couldn't cure, they swallowed their pride and asked for help. Human doctors worked alongside Valoran scientists for months to find a cure. When they succeeded, the Valorans finally understood what they had been missing. "We thought strength meant standing alone," the Valoran leader admitted to President Byung-ho. "Humans taught us that real strength comes from standing together." The galaxy that had once been divided into rulers and servants became a web of friendships and partnerships. When the machine beings of Nexus Prime needed new power sources as their star dimmed, dozens of species offered energy solutions. When the cloud dwellers called Whispers needed help communicating with solid matter beings, the lost singers created translation songs. Dr. Kim Hana, now in her final years, often sat in her office looking at star charts that showed the new galaxy. Where once there had been rigid borders and abandoned zones, now there were trade routes connecting friends, research stations where different species learned together, and rescue fleets ready to help anyone in trouble. "Look how far we've come," she said to her young assistant. "When I was your age, Earth couldn't even send a message to the stars without being rejected. Now we're part of a family that spans the entire galaxy." Her assistant, a young human named Park Min-seo, looked at the charts with wonder. What made the difference? Why did everything change? Hana smiled, remembering the day 30 years ago when Earth first reached out to the stars. "We never stopped, believing that everyone deserves help, even when the galaxy told us we were wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is keep being kind when others aren't. As night fell over Earth, children from dozens of different species played together in parks around the world. The galaxy that had once turned its back on humanity now looked to humans as teachers of what cooperation could achieve. The outcasts had become the foundation of a new civilization,